Chloe Cho, and welcome to Investor Insight Special on CSR and sustainability, coming to you from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We're about to unveil some of Asia's most sustainable companies that made the second ChannelNewsAsia sustainability ranking. CSR and sustainability aren't just catchy corporate taglines anymore, as the importance of awareness and accountability grows as fallout continues from the VW emission scandal. As we're about to take the wraps off the coveted list, the results might surprise you.
There you have it. Wipro, UMC, and Tech Mahindra lead the annual Top 100 that saw Japan Inc. introduced to the list, while Chinese and Philippine companies failed to make the cut. As the VW emission scandal puts corporate awareness and accountability center stage, how much does Tech Mahindra's revival from its scandal-tainted Satyam past offer lessons for companies seeking a turnaround after cheating, lying, and cutting corners? And when CSR isn't enough, find out why champions of CSR should next consider including the poor in their supply chains if they want to make a difference.
We're going to hear from the CEOs of Wipro, UMC, and Tech Mahindra on how they emerged as CSR leaders next. Plus, we'll find out why sustainability is going to become a game changer for companies from AXA's global CEO and chairman, Henri Ducastre.
ChannelNewsAsia sustainability ranking identifies top 100 listed companies in 11 Asia-Pacific markets based on environmental, social, and governance indicators following thorough analysis by Sustainalytics and CSR Asia. The first of its kind ranking in Asia measures how companies scored on sustainability. That saw Japanese firms introduced for the first time, while Chinese and Philippine companies didn't make the top 100. Leading the pack is Wipro for its strong corporate governance and ESG practices. The Indian multinational was noted for its detailed sustainability strategy that addressed both environmental and social risks and opportunities. It even appointed a chief sustainability officer.
Wipro always followed a whole concept that we would do business only if it's clean. So that's been a huge positive measure for all of us. As the organization has grown, we've institutionalized this process because one person can't change the entire organization of 106,000 people. You need to institutionalize it. And the institutionalization has happened over the years, and I think that's a huge benefit.
In second place is UMC, whose robust water risk management program helped it move up from fourth place last year. And even with its facilities running at near full capacity, Taiwan's contract chipmaker was lauded for recycling 73% of its water usage and reducing water consumption.
这些 improvement 这些 activities.
No matter what kind of improvement you want to make, you have to make an initial investment and assessment while engineers spend time conducting studies. Following an extended period of testing, based on customers' feedback, only then can changes be made. This is an important short-term financial and human resources investment and responsibility that pays off in the long run.
In third was Tech Mahindra, that emerged stronger than ever from its scandal-tainted Satyam past. The IT services provider was singled out for training and hiring marginalized youth and people with disabilities.
Like in any other crisis, you need to decide how you're going to tackle the crisis. There is no point in hiding behind a crisis. A crisis is a challenge, that, like every challenge, is also an opportunity. So for us at Tech Mahindra, acquisition of Satyam was an opportunity. There's no point in trying to be dodgy. I mean, in business or in personal life, there is no room for misrepresentations. But if you have done it, then accept it. And then share your rectification plan, share your resurgence plan, be transparent about it, and I think the world will forgive us.
Historically, these IT companies have been, competing on a global scale. It means that they, they've been competing with Western MNCs. They are targeting the same clients, they are operating in the same markets, and they have to comply with the same regulations. So this means that these companies have to align their ESG practices or their sustainability practices. They have to align their ESG disclosure with their Western peers. And I think that's one of the main driver for these companies, to be on the top of this ranking.
You've been doing CSR. You've been watching how sustainability has evolved over many years, even though it just doesn't seem like it. How has it changed in Asia?
10 years ago, there wouldn't be somebody at a company who you could naturally talk to. You would try and engage, and you wouldn't know where to go. Whereas now, increasingly, your investor relations team can talk sustainability. You have sustainability teams, whole entire teams in some of these companies. So the companies themselves have a system, they have processes, they have information available on what they're doing. But also the ecosystem that supports business and surrounds business has also evolved.
It's kind of cool and catchy to say, I love the planet, we care for the environment. But in the end, the fact that you've got big guys supporting what you do at Sustainalytics, that actually goes to show it is gradually, slowly but surely starting to make a difference, and they want decisive action from companies.
There's one class of investors who's basically excluding companies which are perceived as unsustainable. So it might be tobacco companies or companies into controversial weapons. That's one aspect. But there are also a good set of investors who are willing to engage with companies. So I think over the last 2 years, we've seen increased, let's say, disclosure from some of the companies that we cover, because there's a responsible investor who went to them and said, this is what we want, and if you don't disclose, we don't invest.
There are things where there's clear customer demand, there's clear efficiency gains, there's clear risk mitigation approaches that are going to allow us to make the business case very strongly and say, tick these boxes, and over the long term, you will be a healthier company. But unfortunately, there are other parts of the economy where there are companies and businesses operating where that business case just doesn't stack up. But if we look at a lot of the commodities, for instance, I work mostly on agriculture. The value that's in there is not enough. If you took everybody's margins in cocoa and gave it to the cocoa farmers, they would still be in poverty. And there are intrinsic sort of problems within that system. So I think we also need to be a lot more honest in this space and say, let's work on the bits where maybe the ethical investors are concerned about, and that's this bucket of some of the win-win stuff.
Tech Mahindra's emergence as a CSR leader goes to show that there can be light at the end of the sustainability tunnel for companies with a tainted past. Was it a one-off? But first, as we head to a break, here is our CEO Insights with Access Global CEO and Chairman Henri de Cast on why sustainability is a big business.
I think one of the issues we have today, 7 years after the big financial crisis, is that we do not do this reconciliation. Many decision makers in the public sphere want to have no risk with financial institutions, but at the very same time they would like to see more investment in long-term projects. It doesn't work together. And the way we adjust for that is to have a very strange situation where we have over-complacent monetary policies and a lack of funding in long-term projects. A better public discussion, a better educated discussion on what is, as a society, our real risk appetite, because there is no zero risk. We would like the problem to be solved the way a train is moving. When a train is moving, all the carriages, you have a minority of people who are moving first, fast, and you have people who are left over, are not moving, and they move much later. So our issue is to move from the caravan to the train.
Can sustainability mean big business?
The only things which last, by definition, it's stating the obvious, are sustainable things. And what you are looking for when you develop a business is to have things which are going to last. So rather than looking for the short-term wins, which are very tactical, you should develop a long-term view, a vision of the future, because this is what's going to create big and sustainable things. And by the way, I think that Singapore is a phenomenal example for that.
Just saw the top 10 winners of ChannelNewsAsia's sustainability ranking. There's no question that company CSR ideals have merit, but the overall execution can be deeply flawed, as we learn from the case of Volkswagen. The ongoing saga makes us wonder whether such fraudulent behavior risks making CSR irrelevant.
From faulty ignition switches and defeat mechanisms in automobile software to downright accounting fraud, history is full of stories where corporate greed overtakes conscience and accountability. And Volkswagen may have company in using defeat devices to fool energy-efficient tests. Samsung TVs in Europe are accused of appearing less energy efficient in real life than in lab tests, a charge the South Korean tech giant denies. This brings to question the true meaning of CSR as companies fork out billions of dollars to develop their corporate conscience, a move that's seen beneficial not only for the environment, but also their profits.
What the Volkswagen case really shows us is that while a company's CSR and sustainability initiatives can be going down one track, there is also a huge commercial pressure on the other track to win in the market share, win in terms of return on investment, and that if we only talk on this side and don't engage on the commercial practices and the commercial pressures and the incentive structures within companies, then we're not really going to get to the real change we want to see.
I see the VW scandal as fraud. They have broken the law, and I think it would be very hard to have been able to identify that in advance. A group of people have clearly broken the law within that organization, but what I think it does for every other company is make us reflect on the data we make available, the checks and balances that we have in place, and then to come back to your point as well in terms of the governance of sustainability within an organization. And for me, a key aspect is do we have performance-related pay for senior executives related to sustainability?
After seeing his share price pummeled and CEO Martin Winterkorn and several top executives go, VW's road ahead is bumpy, given huge costs for fines, lawsuits, recalls, and further credit ratings downgrades following a move by S&P.
When you think about it, why a company as big as VW, as respected as VW, lied in the first place? It's because they realized that they couldn't grow or gain market shares or gain additional revenues if they didn't offer, I would call, sustainability products. Because this is what clients, consumers are demanding today. Sustainability is not a nice thing to have, actually. It's something that you need to embed in your business.
As the German carmaker reels in its worst crisis in its 78-year history, the case sends a strong message that consumers want companies with a transparent CSR strategy that isn't just lip service.
And joining us right here on Investor Insights is CSR Asia's founder and chairman, Richard Welford. So without a question, the ideals of CSR have merit. But on the other hand, we've learned from the Volkswagen experience that the overall execution can be spotty. So when you face circumstances like this, does CSR actually become irrelevant or has the risk of becoming irrelevant?
No, I don't think so. I think the Volkswagen case is an interesting one. Here's a company that is actually perceived in the past as being very socially responsible, but has made a very, very big mistake. So the data manipulation, the communication of data that is false is going to be a very big mistake, and they will be punished for that. I believe that they will be punished in the market for that. So rather than detracting from CSR, I actually think it demonstrates that being sustainable, being responsible is even more important than previously. It's companies that are responsible that we will buy products from. It's companies that are responsible who will have better business-to-business relationships. Companies who end up sort of telling us lies will ultimately be found out and severely punished by the market, I believe.
It's interesting to see Tech Mahindra emerging as number 3 on the list. Does it show that there can be a phenomenal revival even for companies that have cheated and lied? But it was a different story when it came to their accounting standards. Or is Volkswagen in a different case?
I think Volkswagen is different. If you look at someone like Tech Mahindra, in fact, you look at all 5 of the leading companies on the ChannelNewsAsia sustainability rating, they're all technology companies. These technology companies are open to a huge amount of business-to-business pressure. You know, these technology companies have had to be very accountable in the marketplace. You know, we've had scandals around supply chains in the technology sector, and these companies have had to respond to those in a clear and open way, pushing that transparency agenda. So I think these are companies that have experienced sustainability pressure and have responded to that sustainability pressure rather well.
There's a general perception that being sustainable is great and it makes you feel good, but it adds another process, another layer of cost. Is that true?
No, I don't believe that is true. I don't believe that sustainability actually is a net cost. If you spend money on sustainability, I think it's an investment, and it's an investment in your future profitability. You know, the reality is that we have a lot of evidence now that clearly shows that companies oriented around sustainability will outperform those who are not oriented around sustainability. So the evidence actually is contrary to what you actually say. This is good for business. Being socially responsible and sustainable will actually create value for your business and not be a cost.
Coming up, CSR versus inclusive business. Can inclusive business strategies truly uplift poor communities while helping businesses remain commercially viable? Welcome back. CSR has inherent limitations in budget, scope, and impact. Therefore, businesses are being enticed to go inclusive by incorporating poor communities into their value chains. It's a concept first formalized in a United Nations report in 2008, and proponents profess that going inclusive truly impacts lives, contributes to development goals, and kicks off a virtuous cycle.
Is it possible to have a sustainable supply chain solution with a net positive social, environmental, and business impact? The answer is a resounding yes, according to Interface, the world's largest manufacturer of modular carpet. Take a look at how abandoned fishing nets from coastal communities are used as carpet fibers, regenerated into nylon yarns before they are reborn into beautiful carpets. Seen as a pioneer of the inclusive business model, Interface partnered with the Zoological Society of London, yarn producer Aquafil, and conservation group Project Seahorse to build a network to source raw materials for its carpet while getting it a step closer to achieving Mission Zero. Its teams descended along Philippine shores to help clean up many of its polluted beaches as part of its Networks program that offered local villagers an additional income stream as well as access to microfinance and community banking. With its program deemed a success, Interface is looking further afield in Africa. Some 660 million people depend on the world's oceans, whose pollution levels are worsening by the year, with discarded fishing gear accounting for some 10% of marine waste globally, threatening the ocean's fragile ecosystem. As Interface takes the first steps to create a truly restorative loop in carpet tile production, Onyx, an Asian hospitality group, is also trying to go inclusive. Onyx launched a so-called Plan B rural beekeeping project in Krabi, Thailand in 2013 by offering local villagers the basic equipment to start a mini bee farm. What began as just 24 hives a few years ago have now grown into 600, complete with a full ecosystem from bee farmers, hive makers to ancillary businesses including smoke equipment makers to net makers. With local schools now involved in its Plan B mission, Onyx is now taking other CSR and inclusive business initiatives across its platforms to help create a more sustainable future.
What we're talking about here for the Plan B, as we call it, is a very small amount of money, and it doesn't have, it has scalability, but even then it's not going to, it'll be very meaningful in the villages that we bring this to, but it would be not meaningful at all for us, as it were. And indeed, it has a cost impact because we're frankly paying over the top, initially anyway, for this honey that's being produced rather than buying it commercially. But that's okay, it's something that we're prepared to take on board. It has a minimal effect, as it were, because it's an investment by us in what we see as this important inclusive business.
When you say you're going inclusive, it's got to add up. It can't be like 1%. But at the end of the day, from an economic standpoint, is it important that companies take the first step before they get the business model correct?
One is to go really to the big fish, to the bigger companies, which have a lot of smaller companies in their value chain. So to go to you guys, yeah, to basically think about inclusive business models which can be big, like Nestle in the Philippines, coffee, 70,000 farmers in the value chain, a smaller company, medium-scale company there, 20,000 coffee farmers in the value chain. So the second way is basically to encourage more inclusive business, more companies to do such models. And here is a role for the public sector. Here's a role for the government to do that.
But when your company was actually scaling up and you decided to transition that business model, did you run into cash flow problems, which is very typical for business, run into local regulatory risks? There's so many hurdles.
We had an amazingly profitable outcome through focusing on waste. We saved something like $600 million over a period of 10 years as a $1 billion company, so it was highly significant. And the resources that then freed up we used to invest in other parts of the program. What we've learned over 20 years is that we've yet to find a customer who will pay more for this stuff. We've yet to find a customer who will pay more for a more sustainable product. But we find many more customers. So that's where the return is. You do much more business. Is it a risk? Yes, it is. Is any form of innovation a risk? Yes, it is. We do it every single day of the week. That's not an excuse.
And that's our Investor Insight special on CSR and sustainability, coming to you from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm Chloe Cho, signing off on behalf of the entire team. Many thanks for watching.